All right. Thank you for your patience. And I want to welcome you to our event, a career masterclass. Chandan Vijay, who is the director of IT at Honeywell. Welcome, Chandan. Introduce the topic, mastering the art of digital technology leadership. And just let you know, using WebEx controls, you can put questions in for Chandan into the Q&A function, and we'll log those for the questions toward the end of the webinar. You can chat as well, but best to put the questions into the Q&A for us. We will be doing a couple of polls, and one of these will start right now. And the question is, what's your level of experience, your work experience? We also asked how you're doing today, because we've been asking that throughout the pandemic to make sure that we have an idea of how people are doing. With all the changing rules, lockdowns coming and going, surging and receding. Got another 15 seconds or so. And we'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here are the results. So we have a bimodal audience for you, Chandan. We have about a third of the people with 10 years or more experience. We have a third of the people who are still in school, and everyone else is kind of evenly distributed between. And the good thing, of course, is that almost everybody is in the doing well or doing okay category. We hope that what you have to say will help improve the outlook for the people in the third category there. So without further ado, let's introduce you. The Director of IT at Honeywell. You're going to give a more thorough introduction, but I just wanted to say a few things. A digital and technology leader who is very well qualified to talk to this particular topic. He's focused on applying the technology to improve all of our lives, and he has previously been with Cognizant and GE, and he will talk a little bit more about himself. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and allow him to share his, and you will be able to start the presentation.
Sure, Stuart.
Okay, one moment, and I will transfer. All right, Chandan, you'll be able to share your screen now.
Perfect. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
I'm sharing the presentation, so hopefully you should be able to see that.
Yep, we are seeing that.
All right. So, hi, everybody. I know it's a bit late in India time, at least. So thank you very much for your time and patience to come for this webinar and hear me speak. I'm not a master of digital technologies, so I don't claim to be an expert, but I'm again a practitioner, though for a fair bit of time. And I've been, most of my career journey has been with GE, 17 plus years, starting 2003 till 2020. I joined Cognizant in late 2020, and only earlier this year, I've joined Honeywell as a director of IT. So this is my brief career journey I enjoy cooking. I enjoy, if I have to call, games on Xbox or consoles. I like reading fiction. My favorite author is Frederick Forsyth. I enjoy photography. I used to have quite a bit of collection of lenses and SLR cameras, no longer anymore now. World has changed. Mr. Steve Jobs, one of the topmost digital technology leaders, if I have to call, a product leader, has changed the world by bringing in camera in your phones and in the hands of pretty much everybody, and thereby eliminating the need for carrying those bulky cameras and lenses and giving you an opportunity to capture anywhere and anytime. So, brief summary about myself. I'll move into the main topic for the day. Technical glitches. So I'll start the topic, which is mastering the art of digital technology leadership. When you look at this picture, I think what is on the left hand side, the image clearly shows a leader or a person or a personality having multiple arms doing multiple tasks together. That's what literally a digital technology leader encompasses in today's tech world. They are required and bound to do multiple jobs at the same time. They are multi talented personalities which lead and which execute several things at the same time. So, taking more into details, Stuart, if you're not able to see the presentation, just let me know because I'm in presentation mode. And
Yes,
if it's
I'm hearing you. I think you, for I will send a message to people who are having trouble.
sure. So let's talk about what is or who is a digital technology leader. Now, in today's world, if I have to compare with somebody who used to be a general manager or a VP or a leader in a company several years back, or at least even if I talk with my own experiences, when I started my career in 2003, everybody was focused on what is called as information management. So your company is producing data, which you're saying, trying to say, okay, we're producing it in such a way that we call it information and we're managing. And you would have applications to basically input data into a system and then keep it. As the years progressed from 2003 till now, it kind of changed from information management to it became IT, where people started learning languages like, okay, Java, your JSPs, your J2E came in, and you start making more applications which were more versatile and segregating the business logic into multiple tiers. Your front end was a different whereas your database technology was different. So that was an era where technology played a big role in driving information. Then came in around, if I were to say, early around 2010, 2011, is when the digital started kind of coming in, and we said, okay, this is now the time we call it digital technology world. And that's how things have started progressing. Now, a digital technology leader is somebody who understands the three aspects. He understands technology. He understands what are the strategic systems or assets that needs to be built and digitized that will produce business goals much faster in a more leaner fashion and with less cost. So they're kind of like building things in an organization which are in basically increasing revenue, which is giving organic growth to the organization. And somebody who kind of blends leadership, be it people management, be it setting up vision and strategy, be it driving change, be it communicating the goals and the objectives of the organization, blended with technology and digital world. Now, when everybody says talk about digital, it just doesn't mean you're trying to digitize your systems and your processes that are in the company. It is more holistically looking at the overall organization, what it is doing, how it is doing, and thereby eliminating the waste out of the processes, simplifying the work, creating a much, much more elaborate and enjoyable user experience for the customers as well as employees. And that in turn gives you that organic growth that the company is looking. Any questions, Stuart?
No, we're good.
Okay. So if we talk about a digital technology leader, right? What are the broad roles and responsibilities of a DT leader? In a gist, if I have to call, a digital technology leader is supposed to drive a vision and build a culture which is more digital oriented. And when we say digital oriented means it gives experiences, connected experiences to its employees, to its customers, which is more leaner, which is more simpler, and which kind of makes the life easier for everybody who's experiencing through that digital journey. Whether it be it, if you talk an example of supply chain or talk an example of any data-driven organization, you have to think in terms, okay, if I'm building a data-driven organization, what are the needs? What is my vision to build that organization? Do I want to make data available to people, or should I make products that give insights to users who want to consume the data, thereby eliminating what are the things that are supposed to be built? So rather than people and system to do the things by themselves, you're giving them an experience in itself. So thereby you're creating a vision, you're building a culture where people are getting more seamless, cherished experience in the organization. Again, another responsibility of a digital leader is how their employees become productive. Now, if you have to simply look at the last 3 years, right? Before COVID came in, a lot of organizations had their data centers on premise. People used to work out of offices on desks. They would have a PC or a desktop on their desks, and you would walk into the office, work for those 9 hours, 10 hours, 11 hours. God knows, sometimes people would work for 12 hours in shifts. And then thereby, you had a different experience working in an organization. When the COVID came in, the world realized you can't go to your office, you can't work. In those first 3 months or 4 months in 2020, if I have to call, starting February till I think May or June, organizations across the world were scuttling to make their employees productive. And how did they do it? They started either sending their desktops to their employees' homes, giving them connectivity at homes, laptop provisioning. Now, you could give an asset, but what happens if your organization's network can't support it? Thereby, organizations had to transform what they want to do it in next 24 to 36 months. They were able to accomplish that in next 4 to 6 months because they were realizing their revenue was getting hit. Their customers were getting impacted. Their employees were getting impacted. Thereby, the organization had to transform rapidly. And there came in the digital leaders who said, okay, let's move things to cloud native technologies. Let's have service delivery vans, uh, software driven network services. And that's how, if you realized, a lot of organizations moved faster and people were able to work out of homes. So, digital technology leaders' responsibility is to make sure their employees, their team members have the right tools in their hands. They're able to build and develop using those technologies and become more productive. So if you have to compare March 2020 versus March 2022 in 2 years' time, now the organization is saying, no, no, we'll move to flex working hours because we've realized there's a digital experience that the team is there now. Our employees can work out of anywhere, which in turn is getting more productivity to the people and the projects and the organization. It is improving customer satisfaction, and it is also increasing revenue because now you're paying less for facility premises, you're paying less for a lot of other benefits that the employees used to be provided while in the workplace, be it cabs, be it your coffee machines, just to name an examples. and thereby giving a much more leaner and simplified experience to the employees. Another trait or responsibility of a digital technology leader is how do you improve customer satisfaction? By giving a user experience to the customers which are simplified for them, which are easy to use, and which is technology driven. If you have to compare uh, banking 10 years back versus 5 years back versus now, you would realize that the customer for a bank has transformed a lot, and so has a banking organization. 10 years back, if you wanted to take the money out, you would have to go to the ATM, right? If you had to open a bank account, you would have to go and visit a branch, or somebody at least would come to your home and do that whole piece of account setting up, KYC, and then the account will be opened. You will be dispatched a physical card, a physical PIN by another mail, and you would have to go to ATM, change your PINs, and so on and so forth. As times changed, banking became a little more simplified. You could just submit certain documents through online. You would get your card still dispatched to your home. They had their digital assets, which were like the web based portals, which could help you get account balances, change the pins, and so on and so forth. If you look at today's world, right, there are banks in India which don't have physical presence at all. Their entire world or their entire banking runs on digital services. They're giving such a simplified experience to the customers, which are like from a opening from a bank account, you submit all your documentation through a mobile phone application. Within few minutes, your account is provisioned basis of the KYC that you have done through digital, be it through Aadhaar-based linking, or be it through a PAN-based linking, or an ITR that you're giving, and then the customer gets immediate services such as UPI. You can transfer funds immediately. Your services are provisioned within few minutes. So the customer's life has simplified a lot with the enhancement of technology and by digitizing the overall ecosystem. So it's not just how banks have changed or digitized how they used to work. They have literally disrupted how they used to work. No physical banking, no presence, point of presence, and you just move on and be work there. Which is what is helping the fourth point, which helps organizations increase their revenue. Because if you're not spending your money or your investments in physical assets or in people and still offering the same services as any other organization, you are saving dollars, you're saving money for your own organization. And last of the law, not the least, a digital technology leader must celebrate success for his team, for his organization. A lot of times, managers tend to have large releases and you'd say, hey, we've had a great thing, but then you just move on and we keep on working. A good DT leader celebrates successes with his or her team and kind of shares the accountability as well as the what you would call if the praises with the teams itself. I'll move into the next section, which is what skills would you need for becoming a DT leader in the next career span of, let's say, 12 months, 24 months, depending on where do you stand in your career. You may want to like pick a couple of those and say, okay, these are the areas I need to focus because that's going to take me to my next level. And then again, you take certain more points and you start working on enhancing them to become a more efficient DT leader. It's not just simply just technology leader that is enough nowadays. By digital technology leader, you're trying to understand your customer, you're trying to understand what is the technology landscape, you are trying to learn and grow with the upcoming technology landscape changes, and thereby offering services and innovation and creativity to your organization, to guide your team that makes you more efficient DT leader. I'll move into the next section, which is okay, what's the key trait or skills that you want to build? A good DT leader has a vision for his or her team, his or her organization, with a clear mind in its place that, okay, hey, this is what is to be accomplished if I have to become a DD leader. I'm laying down a very clear roadmap for people to see. I'm laying down what are the priorities that we need to accomplish and what will be the, if not the end goal, what is that we want to accomplish by this year end or in the next 24 months, and where do we need to stand with respect to our competition. That vision is something that is an important trait or a skill that a DT leader must develop. Today's world, you're not running a project. It is more about how are you running an overall ecosystem. It is encompassing of products. You've got your APIs, you've got your data, you've got a big data coming in, you've got the social media presence. A DT leader looks at the larger picture, creates a vision, a direction statement, and shares with his or her team and an organization and motivates everybody to walk towards that vision. Going to the next one is laying down a very clear strategy is an important skill or a trait of a DT leader. You have your vision, but if you do not know what is my strategy to go to that vision, there's a good likelihood that you would fail. Because without having a clear path laid out, without having a clear strategy of how I want to accomplish, do I need to do an inorganic growth versus do I need to do an organic growth? Those are some of the things, those are the things that as a strategy, the leader will have to look at it and say, okay, this is what my vision is. I'm translating that into a roadmap. Now, to meet that roadmap and to walk on that, this is what my strategy is. Am I targeting on my IT infrastructure? Am I targeting my operations? Am I targeting my supply chain? Am I targeting my marketing and design and sales teams? Or am I giving power in the hand of my CEOs and CFOs in the CXO group to make decision making? By laying out a clear foundation through a strategy, the vision is what starts getting translated into an actionable items that you would want to accomplish. Stuart, anything that you want to talk, anything you want to bring in at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, there's
That's it.
a really interesting uh, question for you from Mayank, um, which is how do you identify what kind of digital technology is beneficial for a particular problem and um, that's going to solve a problem for your business when you enable it?
I think it's an interesting question because one solution doesn't fit everywhere. So in a DT space, I think the fundamental part is to understand first what is the customer, what is the customer needing, what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And instead of getting into a problem solving mode, you start analyzing the information or the data that you can gather around with the two things that you know. Who's my customer? What is my customer's problem? And by applying the data, you're trying to kind of associate and trying to understand the KPIs which will drive the decision making as to how you can solve that problem. And by that means, then you can start thinking, how can I solve that? So let's say if you look at, let's say, rural India, right? Today's world has got, everybody's got a smartphone in their hands. And if I were to call the same thing, right? Uh, a banking operation, if somebody needs to transfer funds, there was a time when person has to go to a bank and either give a check and do that. Whereas today, a lot of banks are offering digital solutions through their apps or even through SMS based services on a feature based phone. So it's not that you're just trying to solve a problem by fitting everybody. So let's say a person sitting in Bangalore or Mumbai or Delhi would have a smartphone in their hand where with a nice looking app, that solution can be solved. But if you come to rural India where the connectivity is not that great, people might not have the best phones or the applications might not be that stable. How do you give a service to the customer? So then you are thinking through differently who your different customers are, who your target audience is, and then you're trying to build a solution. I hope I answered that question.
I think you did. We'll be getting to more questions later in the session.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, the next one is communication. Now this is I don't know, like how many of you might have like heard this thing. Communication is one of the most important, uh, if I were to call traits for any leader. And in especially in DT world, the communication is not just downwards as a leader. It has to be upwards to your leadership. It has to be lateral and horizontal across, and it'll go beyond the organization to your customers, to your competitors also. Because now you're trying to communicate in a 360-degree sphere kind of environment. A DT leader is not just communicating downwards. He's communicating with his seniors, with customers, trying to gather as much information so that will help his or her team to make a more, if I have to call, data-driven judgment or a decision making. So communication is a very, very important trait if I have to call being a great DT leader. You have to be able to communicate the strategy. You have to be able to communicate the vision. You have to be able to personally connect with the organization, the teams, the customers. It's not just becoming like, okay, you're just sending meeting minutes and all. How do you building relationships that will give you more meaningful insights, be it your customers, be it your peers, be it your competitors, because you're trying to understand how the market is happening and how the dynamics might change, and how do you influence the external factors. And that happens when you are able to effectively communicate what is that is in your vision, what is in your strategy. Even if you're a middle level manager, you're not a very CXO level kind of a person or a director or senior director, but you intend to grow in an organization. Communication is one of the most important aspects of delivering the message in the most concise manner, creating and building relationships with your peers, with your leaders, and thereby making it one of the most important traits of any leader. And even in DT, I think this is one of the most important ones. If you look at the icon which shows, it is like it's a repetitive process. You are communicating and you're receiving, and you interpret that as a feedback, or you take insights out of that, and then you again reiterate the information that you want to share, and then that cycle keeps on continuing as long as you're delivering something and you're motivating the people and moving forward on your roadmap, and you're changing the strategy as you're driving that roadmap. The next one is innovation. Now I think uh, it's one of the most important ones in a DD leaders skill sets or traits as to how do you develop innovation, creativity, disruption through looking outside, looking inwards, looking at your peers, looking at your competitors, and saying, and also understanding how the world is changing. If you have to look at like the biggest innovator in our generation, I think Steve Jobs is a perfect example. He literally changed the world by the ideas that he had and by bringing them on and doing them. So uh, that is one of the biggest traits that you have to look at. That if you look at like if you think about Apple as a product, right? When Apple used to sell uh, Macs long back, there was one problem with Apple Macs. They never had a CD writer. And back in those days, Windows PCs used to have CD writers. You could just burn songs into your CDs and play it in your computer. Apple didn't have that. And Steve Jobs said, to hell with that. I don't want to give a CD writer on my Mac because that product, I like it as is. I'm going to give world something which is completely disruptive. He created iPod. He gave the power of songs, listening to songs in people's hands. That's how innovation is, that's how disruption is. So a DD leader has to be looking at how the world is, what the customer is expecting, going beyond it, and then delivering something which makes, as I said, the user experience or the customer experience absolutely mesmerizing, absolutely cherished. Stuart, you have to give me 1 minute. I think there is somebody at the door, and my apologies, everyone. Please bear with me.
Oh, okay, no worries. This is what happens
Yeah.
when we're all working from home.
True, absolutely. That is how the world is. So you have to bear with
Yeah,
me, please. Just give me 1 minute.
okay. Take a moment. In the meantime, we're getting a number of questions, and if I make an announcement, the people who need to hear it won't hear it, which is some people are having some audio problems, which is a difficulty that we often have with the WebEx platform. I can tell you that Simplilearn will be moving to Zoom in a couple of months, but in the meantime, if you've been having intermittent audio problems, please check your WebEx settings. We also will be sending out a recording of the session so that you'll be able to catch up with anything you missed. And hi, Chandan.
Hey, I'm back.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
have a question, by the way, that came in, and it regards the first thing you mentioned, which was vision. And Indramani asks, in this rapidly changing world, how does a digital leader know or recognize his own vision, his or her own vision?
Interesting one. I think it's again a very subjective one because I think in which industry you are, it all depends on that. If you're in the manufacturing industry, is there a way you can simplify manufacturing processes? Uh, Not just by digitizing, but how you can change the process itself. For example, even lean for that matter. That is another, if I call, an integral aspect of a digital technology organization. So it all depends on where do you work, what future do you foresee could happen. If in 2019, I don't think anybody could have said world will be running on VPN or no VPN, and users or the employees of the organizations would not have to connect to VPN and still be able to access a broad amount of the assets that the organization had, right? Now, some of the leaders had the vision to say, no, we want to change the world. We will give a much seamless user experience to our employees. We'll give them laptops. We'll give them connectivity in such a way that they go home, turn it on, and everything is available on internet, which they primarily use, be it emails, be it some other non-confidential applications of the organization. And how did they do it? They said, okay, let's move everything into the cloud. Let's give more simplified VPN solutions where people don't have to enter username, password, pins. It basically authenticates through the PC or a certificate itself and do it. Those organizations who implemented it a couple of years back before COVID hit were the ones which were the most, I think I would have to call the fastest to get back on their feet and be able to like run in the direction they were supposed to. If I were to give like a simple example again, I wouldn't call it a DT one, but in a lot of manufacturing facilities, there are systems which can produce objects by a simple changing the parameters or setups for building one. So fabric industry is one. When COVID hit, a lot of small organizations which were making basic stuff They transform their supply chain, they transform their processes of manufacturing to build masks. And everybody knows, right? In the first 1 year of COVID, mask was a very integral thing. So just by changing their system of manufacturing and the process of manufacturing, they were able to produce something which was needed in demand, and then therefore they were able to give a better customer experience, which is like people were able to get more masks in their hands. And at that point in time, masks was a commodity which was selling like hotcakes. Therefore, the organizations earned their revenue. So a vision is something which you have to understand. What do you foresee in your future, in your domain, and how something disruptive can change that future. And that is something which you say is now my vision. Can I actually accomplish it? And then you start strategizing in that direction. You start laying out very clear tactical items, or smaller strategic initiatives which would drive a much larger strategic or tactical execution aspect. Hope I answered that question. Okay, moving on. Digital literacy. Now, what does this mean basically? Back in 10 years back, 15 years back, even 5 years back for that matter, a lot of business leaders would not want to touch their hands with technology. And the leaders who learned with the new era and they understood what technology is and how it might shape the future, they started understanding it, and then they started asking questions to their organizations. How can this change help me? Or how can this change benefit my business process? Or how can this technology make things simpler for what we're doing? If you look at simply like if we talk about Amazon, right? On the Amazon, when you place an order, you're able to track it all the way till the time the item is delivered to your doorstep. How does it happen? Somebody was able to say, okay, no, I understand phones are there and I understand phone has got a camera. What if I use that phone and the camera to literally scan the package at every station that it goes through, which gives me my real-time data, and therefore I can basically track this whole thing and give a great user experience. Now, one person could think about phone about that way, and the other person could just think phone about, okay, no, I'm going to give this phone to a person who's going to go deliver this package to a person's home. He will call the customer when he reaches the doorstep, and how to give that. So now these are two different aspects of using the same technology. So the leaders who became more literate about digital systems, digital technologies, AI, IoT, 5G, anything that came in, blockchain for that matter, they were able to understand and start asking questions about, okay, how does this benefit me? How does this benefit my organization? How can I make things easier for my customers, for my employees, and therefore make life simpler for what my organization is all representing it? And that is a big trait that a digital leader needs to have now. Understanding what is happening in the world in terms of technology, in terms of digital transformation, how organizations are changing themselves, and then targeting and going behind it in an aggressive way to make things happen for their own organizations. And while they're doing it, one of the most important aspect that comes in is with digital literacy, you need to be hands-on. You just can't be sitting on a fence line and directing people to say, let's do this, let's do that. You need to be understand how the paradigm change happens with the technology and be given again give a clear vision and a strategy around that technology or around that digital transformation. Any questions toward any comments from the audience?
Yeah, we've got a number of questions, but I'll ask one of them. I have an interesting question from Nihit, who observes that multitasking can often cause different aspects of your leadership to diverge in style or in cost. And how do you try to keep a uniform approach across the different tasks that you have to accomplish as a digital leader?
So if I understand the question, what Nithit is trying to ask is multitasking can cause magnitude of problems, and how do you keep a uniform approach, right?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting question. I mean, honestly, I would say I've never multitasked more than like two or three items in my hand because typically human mindset is bound to remember two or three, at the most three things that have been communicated. So if I'm telling you those 10 points today, the skills that you need, probably a lot of people might remember three or four, at the most five. And if I were to talk about multitasking, right? I've known a couple of multitaskers in my organization, really good friends. They literally jot down their tasks and their sequences in a notebook. And then they literally execute on it, and then they keep on cutting those things. And by doing that, so let's say if I'm having five things in my hand or six things in my hand, I would write them down in a piece of paper. I'm literally saying I'm on a piece of paper. I would write down what all do I need to do to accomplish those five or six items in as much as detail as possible. And then while I'm executing it on those, I'll keep on check marking or ticking or crossing them that this is what I've completed. And if there is something, uh, I'll at least like talk about some of the junior leadership, right? A lot of people sometimes have managers, we have got multitasking. I think one of the things that we have learned, at least while working at GE at Honeywell, there is never, it is never wrong to ask your manager or your leader that if you're giving me those five items, what is the priority and when do you need them? That's one of the most important things that is there that you need to be able to like understand. A lot of times when people are given tasks, they become great taskmasters, but they're never able to like grow upon into their as a leadership skill because they didn't simply ask a question. I'll give an example. In back in 2005, we went for a army style, army run camp. It was an orientation program, which was for 3 days. And on the first day, there was a lesson that we learned. There was a retired colonel. He gave us a task to do, and it was a very complicated task. There were several instructions given, a lot of these things given, and people were like supposed to make into different teams, and you're supposed to make your own strategy, come up with a solution, and then provide it to them. While that exercise was going on, this gentleman was like sipping his coffee, enjoying this day, and we kept on brainstorming on that and executing on that for 3 hours. At the end of which, he asked us one question. He said, I observed one thing. None of you even came to me and asked me, do you already have a solution in place or not? He said, I'm your customer or I'm your manager. Why don't you come to me and ask me that, do I have a solution or not? So again, when you're multitasking, I think it's important to ask what are the items, what are their priorities, and when do you need them? Because sometimes when you have been given five items, maybe your leader doesn't want all those five now. He wants one by tomorrow and then the rest four by next Monday. But since you didn't ask, you didn't know. So I think it's very important that you may want to become a great multitasker, but removing your shyness or inhibition to go to your manager, to your leader, and asking, what's your priority? Tell me that. And then doing
That's a,
it. Because that way you're able to focus on what's to be done importantly.
yeah, and that's a good observation with respect to the question, because the discipline of asking about needs, priorities, and deadlines helps to create that uniformity of leadership style or management style across
True.
the group that you're managing, so that everybody knows what they need to do, when they need to do it, and you get more consistency in performance. So that's a very good observation. So thank you for that.
True. Absolutely. I'll move on to the next point. Okay. Adaptability. Now, pretty big, again, trait or a skill as to how do you flex your leadership style in changing environments? How do you change your strategy when the world is changing? Even for sometimes you might have to change your vision. That if the world is changing this way, is my vision still viable? That means accepting the failure, being ready for a change, and moving forward with that. Adaptability to your changing environment, to your changing circumstances is very important to grow as a leader. If all the organizations which were like, oh no, COVID has just come in, it's going to be another 3 days, 3 months, 4 months, we will continue to live the way it is, we'll not change our systems infrastructure, we'll not move to cloud, they probably would have been left behind. They would have been hurt the most. Whereas if you realize, no, we made a mistake, we should have done this like 3 years back. No, we've not done it, but let's make a change and do as fast as possible. In the 3 months or the 4 months, a lot of organizations were ready with their infrastructure. Even the service providers never anticipated that. They had to work really hard for us to get it done. And that's how the world changed. So your vision had to change, your strategy had to change. You had to divert dollars from some one place to another place. Facilities became less and less important. Your infrastructure became more. So as I was saying, right, a vision can have multiple aspects. What do you want to focus on? Do I focus on my infrastructure needs? Do I focus on my customer facing systems? Do I focus on my employee experience? Or do I give something to my leadership to make a decision making? Being adaptable to changing circumstances in the world, in the environment, in the ecosystem, that's another key skill that a leader should develop.
I'd like to make an observation about adaptability and agility. At the beginning of the pandemic, I attended a webinar where people were talking about their initial responses, and one executive, whom I can't trace down her name, but she said a classic thing, which is, if they had asked us a few months ago to make sure everybody could work from home, we would have said it would cost $10 million and take 6 months. When the lockdown happened, it took us 3 days with no budget. So
True.
adaptability and agility are extremely important.
True, Stuart. Next is agile. You can look at the skewed watch. That clearly tells time is a dimension which is very important in digital transformations, in digital technology leaders' schedules. You might have to run agile organizations, fail fast, move fast, learn fast, and deliver fast. Those are some of the things that we typically look in leaders who are really shaping the world today. And by moving fast and by failing fast, they're realizing something doesn't work. Let's just pivot, get into something which will work. And they're not trying to waste their time trying to like schedule and prioritize and try to gather information as much as possible. Sometimes you work from a limited set of data and you make a decision, you pivot for it, and you realize it worked, it didn't work, and then bring your adaptability again, change your strategy, move forward with that. I know agile, a lot of people must be thinking about the agile mindset or the framework. This is not that. This is more about how do you move fast in the organization? How do you communicate your vision effectively? Get a strategy which makes people drive in that direction? And how do you pursue your objectives in the fastest possible way? You can implement agile frameworks, you can do waterfall, whichever way the world wants to work, that's fine. The only thing is, how do you deliver fast? Rather than delivering in a big bang approach, you are giving your customers a roadmap and saying, hey, I'll start with these three things, but I'm promising you in the next 7 months to 9 months, I'm going to give you all these 11 things, and you start working on those. So those are the kind of thought processes that you're giving. You start with an MVP, and then you start delivering to your customer, to your partners, and to the world. This is a big one, appetite for risk, because when we become risk averse, that means our decision making process goes longer. We want to gather as much as data as possible. We want to get buy-in from as many people as possible, get everybody on board, and then kind of execute it in a way that, okay, even when you're executing, you are risk averse. You want to ensure that everything goes for a perfect. Whereas in today's world, as I said, fail fast, move fast. You need to be ready for saying that, hey, it didn't work. I'm going to just abandon it and move forward with a different idea or a different feature. So you're releasing some specific feature in an application which you think is a great one, and your customers didn't like it. Don't fret on it. Don't waste too much time on it. It's a risk you took, didn't work out, no problems. Let's get on to the next task or next strategy on hand and keep moving. Because the more time you ponder on, okay, I've didn't work for me this time. How do I ensure that then the next release or the next item that I'm going to work through will be awesome? Then you're increasing your cycle time for releasing your vision or a strategy into an execution phase, and thereby delaying what you could have done much faster. Any questions, Stuart? I'm sorry, I have a hard stop in 5 minutes, so I'm rushing a little bit, but I have a
Oh,
work meeting
okay.
at 10. So I'm just trying to get
No,
through this.
no worries. I'm going to ask you about communications. We had
Sure.
some questions that came in about communications and conflict management. So can you comment on top-down versus bottom-up communication and how um, the communications in digital leadership uh, reflect on the skill of conflict management?
Okay. So one is top-down communication, the other is bottoms-up communication.
Mhm.
And how does that help in conflict resolution?
Yeah.
Is that how I interpret? Okay, great question. Now, honestly, I mean, if I look at those two kind of communication styles, right? One is when you have a vision, when you have a strategy, when you have a direction. That can never come from a bottoms-up approach. Because if you are an organization leader, it's your responsibility and it's your duty to build that vision and to communicate it effectively to the entire organization so that they can start moving in that direction. Because that's your interpretation of how you're going to get revenue, how you're going to get your brand value, what you are going to get into the market, what your go-to-market strategy is. So that's one aspect of a top-down approach. If I understand what my customers ask is, then I would actually go and communicate in the most effective way of what needs to be delivered. Whereas if I'm looking at a bottoms-up approach, right, I may be able to get more beneficial ideas from a lower rung uh, in terms of from a customer experience perspective, right? Because the developer who's building that aspect, he or she may have an idea about how to simplify the work that they're doing. They probably might not be able to affect or impact the vision or the strategy or the revenue with their idea, but they can definitely have something which is, okay, how do I improve the release time for this product? Or how I can make a component which is used across 10 different elements within one product or different product. So bottoms up approach is great when you want to get feedback, when you want to get ideas from people, because it's not always necessary that the great ideas come from top. But the top down is important when it comes to vision, when it comes to strategy, when it comes to direction, when it comes to making everybody align behind one common vision and direction. Now, when it comes to conflict management, right, there are times where somebody has to put the foot down and say, stop arguing, bickering about, and somebody has to make a decision on top because the person or he or may she may understand the broader aspect of a decision making. So let's say three other developers are having conflict about what feature should go into the application. Now, because the developers would not have an understanding which a product manager or a chief product officer might have had, a top-down decision making in that conflict would be beneficial. Whereas in a bottoms-up organization, when you want to do collaboration, that is where I think it works out better because you're trying to get ideation, you're trying to get ideas, and you're creating an environment which is not shutting down anybody. It is not a decision making at one point in time. You are trying to get as much as, let's say, what could be the features, what could be ideas, how you can enhance something. In a bottoms up communication, you're trying to get people uh, more understanding about, okay, what can you tell us versus what is to be decided and what is it, which is sometimes more on the top driven. So I think you can manage conflict by having both kind of communication styles, by working backwards or down to up, by gathering ideas, by getting suggestions, trying to filter them down as they come up. Because as a leader, you don't want to have a list of 10,000 ideas. Somebody has to basically say, no, this is, I've got like consolidated these 1500. Now, when I have to go to my VP, they need to be 150. When the VP takes to, let's say, CFO, it needs to be 15. When the CFO meets with the chairman and the board of directors, they say, okay, out of the 15, we're going to pick five, and then let's prioritize which of those three, which we will work. So you see how our roadmap is driving a feature to a strategy to a item which is more on the vision side. So that's how bottom to top can work. And when those 1500 filters down to 15, it becomes the responsibility of the topmost leaders to tell you what that vision is, what that strategy is, why we're doing it, what revenue is going to bring, how employee productivity get enhanced, how your flexible working from home might get better. So there are different aspects of those communication styles. I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. So let's finish up the last
The last one.
two here. Yeah, last one, and then I'll let you go.
Sure. The last one is an eye for talent. I mean, that's a very, very important aspect of a leader. Uh, Several years back, my VP told me one thing: "I'm hiring you because I think you're smarter than me." And that line struck with me for a very long time because he was like, "I know certain things in business. I don't know certain things in technology, but I know you are great in technology or great in these three things, and I know you're better than me, and that's why I'm hiring you because I am planning for my own succession planning." So I need to be able to hire those people who should be able to take my position either when I move on, when I move up, or a bus hits me. So, important aspect when you're hiring at any given level in your organization, hire people who may be smarter than you. Because that way you're building an organization which is performance driven, which is talent driven, and where people will know that when they've hired you and when you have hired them, that you respect them. And that's why you hired them. And that brings a lot more camaraderie, that brings a lot of collaborativeness. I hope that helps. I mean, I unfortunately don't have time for questions,
Uh,
but if you want, we can have
Understood.
another session someday, and I can try to do that.
That would be wonderful. Chandan, thank you so much. I will also answer a couple of the questions that have come in, but I really appreciate
Sure.
you taking the time today, and I will share with the audience how they can get in touch with you through LinkedIn and that type of thing. So again,
Certainly.
thank you so much, and if the rest of you will stay on for a moment, we'll finish up the webinar. So,
Thanks, everyone. I would appreciate your time, and good evening and good night. And thanks, Stuart. My apologies. I have to rush out.
no worries.
Thank you.
And I am putting into the chat Chandan's LinkedIn. There we go. There we go. And you'll be able to reach out to him on LinkedIn. I do want to mention one thing about the last thing he said, which was about the eye for talent. There's a story about one of the great advertising agencies of the 20th century, where the owner, David Ogilvy, would give each new employee a Russian nesting doll. You know, those types of dolls that have a doll inside and then another doll inside and then another doll inside. And I think my video is frozen, so I'll keep that off. But in the most innermost doll was a message, like a fortune cookie, that said, if we hire people who are less than ourselves, we will become a company of midgets. If we hire people who are better than ourselves, we will become a company of giants. And that's exactly what Chandan was saying, which is hire people who are smarter than you, better than you, and your company will get that much bigger. Your team will get that much stronger. We had a question from Deepa who asked about the difference between digital literacy and digital skills. And take on that is that digital literacy is understanding what technology can do. Digital skills is understanding how to make technology do it. So sometimes a leader doesn't need to know how to make something happen, need to know how to do the coding or the configuration, but a leader always needs to understand what the capabilities are so that uh, they can reasonably evaluate what their team is doing. The example from Amazon is great because if you're uh, digitally literate, as Chandan said, you understand that a smartphone is not just a voice communication device, it's a IoT point of uh, information exchange. So it can be used to collect location data and identity data and a whole bunch of other things that are important to tracking the process of delivery. So the digitally literate leader understands that and then works with the team to define the systems that actually implement that. So that, I hope that clarifies that difference. And I would like to finish up with a poll. And let me share the screen again. And we'll get to the correct slide here. So this poll asks, what digital skills are you interested in learning? We just talked about the difference between skills and literacy. Um, give you about 40 seconds. So what are the tools that you want to add to your digital toolkit? And then also, when you think about doing that, when would you like to start that process? And about another 10 seconds. And we'll close the poll. Here's the result. So about half of our audience is interested in leadership skills in business and project management, which is consistent with today's topic. About a third of you are interested in digital marketing, and we did have questions about entrepreneurship and how to take teams from your current company, or how to build a team in a startup that's similar to the team you had in your current company. Hopefully we can have Chandan and other speakers who will talk on that topic, and we'll keep you apprised of those opportunities. And it's also interesting to see about 2/3 of the audience was interested in starting either right away or within the first next 3 months. So we'll offer you ways to do that. Again, Chandan has his LinkedIn information in the chat, but I will put it there again just to make sure that you've got it. So let me do that. And want to mention one of the flagship programs that Simplilearn offers in conjunction with Purdue University. Purdue is one of the leading universities in the United States, and actually has a worldwide reputation. And together with Purdue and KPMG, the leading consulting firm, we've created a program for training in digital transformation. This is an excellent program that is intended to give you very strong digital leadership skills, and it's appropriate for people who are well along in their careers, and it will help you take your career to the next level. So here is in the chat a link to the program page where you can learn more about this particular program. And I do want to mention that our next webinar in our series is Tuesday of next week, 1 week from today. This is a masterclass for those of you who are in software development and DevOps. And if you're not, but you have friends, team members, colleagues who are, please let them know about this class.